to rock this place.
Welcome to the Buffalo Sports Conversation Room. I'm your host, Jamie Malloy, and we're here to talk some Week 14 NFL football. But first, I'd like to bring on my co-host, Joe Dalio, then our special guest, Sal Capaccio. Sal works for WGR 550 Radio in Buffalo, New York, and is an analyst for Buffalo Kickoff Live every Sunday morning at 11:30 a.m. on CBS. So first, here's Joe. Hey, Joe, how's it going?
It is going very well, thank you. How you doing, Jamie?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous. How about yourself?
It's great. I always look forward to these Tuesday night podcasts here, and of course, it's always better after a big Bills victory, right? You know, we got some positive things to talk about. We have an excellent guest that I listen to on a regular basis, so looking very much forward to this show tonight.
And glad you're on, and I'm glad you brought up this guest because I listen to him too. So now, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on our special guest, Sal Capaccio. Sal Capaccio. Sal Capaccio. Sal Capaccio. Hey, Sal, how you doing?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Be here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You got it.
Yeah, sure. So, Sal, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I grew up in Cheektowaga, went to Cleveland Hill High School, so I grew up a lifelong, Buffalo sports fan, and basically I'm doing what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. I'm talking about sports for a living in Buffalo and covering the Bills and even the Sabres. On my talk show, not the beat reporter for them, but I go to a lot of Sabres games and talk about them. But my main job is to cover the Buffalo Bills every day at practice and whatever's going on with the team, and then I do a talk show every day from 10 to 12 on WGR, and then I'm on the sidelines every Bills game on the Buffalo Bills radio network, which is pretty awesome to be a part of.
Yes, indeed, and you have a very great body of work that you've done very well over these years, so we're impressed.
Thank you.
And we're glad to have you on, so welcome. So now I'd like to start out the show and pick Sal's brain here with some storylines going around. So Sal, are you ready for these?
Let's go, man. Let's do it.
Okay, so number one, we're going to take a look at the possibility of getting rid of head coach Sean McDermott. After last week with what was going on with the fans not being happy, but he got the game ball this week after a big win over Kansas City in the locker room, and the team still has his back. And many fans were calling for his head last week to be fired. Well, I'm not one of them. I believe that with a 69-41 regular season record, and he already has a better winning percentage in his 3 years than Marv Levy did over his entire career. I actually saw that as a fact. And with his 3 AFC titles, that I realize McDermott isn't always the one to blame. I mean, you can only coach so much. Players still play the game, as they say. So, Sal, do you think that if they don't win any more games this season, or they go 8-9 or 9-8 or 10-7, but barely miss the playoffs, do you think that McDermott should be fired?
Do I think he should be? No. I don't think that Terry Pegula would do that either. Now, if it went really south and they did lose every one of their games, I think you'd probably have a discussion, and there would be obviously even more fans who would want that. But short of something like that, I don't see it. I mean, Terry Pegula, he's gone through a lot of head coaches and GMs with the Sabres and Bills. He has a model of stability here in Buffalo with the Bills right now, with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. I think he really cares greatly about that. And what you mentioned, all those records that Sean has, all the winning that Sean done has meant a lot. It means a lot. Now, look, it's a results-oriented business, and, it's what have you done for me lately in this league? And, right now the Bills are sitting on the outside looking in. If they were to finish this season and not make the playoffs, I'm sure there were people who would want that. I mean, heck, if they make the playoffs and lose, there's going to be people who want that. I don't think it should happen. I think Sean is a really excellent football coach. I don't think he's perfect. There are things he can always improve on, but I also know that, this is a guy that does everything he can every single day to try and get the Buffalo Bills to hoist the Lombardi. And, I think, unfortunately, they've fallen short, but I don't think that means that he can't get it done.
I totally agree with that. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot depends on what happens in the regular season, I think. Should he be fired? I'm in that no category. Will he be? I think a lot depends on what happens the last few games of the season. And I honestly think that if the Bills do make the playoffs, again, the odds are still kind of against them at this point. But if they do, this could be some of his best coaching since he's been here, getting them in the playoffs after the season that they've had. So I think he definitely deserves to stay if the Bills end up in the playoffs or even win the division somehow. Again, we'll see what happens once the season ends and how it ends. And I think the players showed the other day, though, that they're going to play for him. They've always played very well for him, and they stood up for him after the events of this week. So I think the players got his back, and the players want him here. And I guess time will tell.
And GM Brandon Bean has got his back as well. And keep in mind, both Bean and McDermott are signed through 2027 so far. They were extended after last year's playoff loss, which was good. So anyway, so now I'm really, really confused on this next question, Sal. I've been watching the Bills for, I'd say, 15 to 19 years now, since I'm a younger Bills fan. And obviously you've been covering the Bills for as long as you have. And I want to know about the so-called warning that Andy Reid says that he's supposed to get. And Andy Reid quoted here, he quoted exactly, "I've been doing this a long time, and this isn't an excuse or a blame on the officials for blowing the game, but it's a working relationship. You see it on both sides. You give the head coach a heads up. That's how it's worked over the years." That's what I was really trying to get across. And so what do you think of the fact that Andy Reid all of a sudden is saying this now, when I don't ever remember referees ever giving a team a warning on a penalty, because we didn't get a warning when we had 12 guys on the field against Denver, right? So what's up with that, you think?
Well, look, I mean, fans aren't going to hear these warnings they're talking about, right? It's not like they're announcing it to the stadium. But generally what happens is, and what he's referring to is, I played wide receiver, okay, and I coached football, and here's how it works. You basically, as a wide receiver, because you're so far away from the ball and you're out right there, and sometimes there's a crown on the field and the angle's a little different where the line of scrimmage is. When you go up to the line of scrimmage, if you're the receiver on the line of scrimmage, you generally look over to the official at your side. You put your hand up and you say, "Am I good? Am I good?" You say, "I'm on the line." You tell them, "I'm on the line. I'm on the line." The official will then sometimes tell you to back up, tell you to move up. In high school ball, a lot of times they'll give you, like, literally put their foot down and say, "Stay, my foot is the line." Just kind of help out a little bit there. If there's something that's been going on, throughout the game, that's just what he means, which is sometimes you might get an official say, "Hey, listen, man, you've been lining up a little bit too far. I'm going to throw a flag here if you don't move back a little bit." Sometimes that happens. They're not required to do it, though. And, it's not the official's job to do the player's job for them. And oftentimes it often comes, though, with, Andy Reid said it there, it's a working relationship. The receiver needs to look at the official and ask a lot of times. And if you do that, you're generally going to get a lot of times the official helping you in those situations. It doesn't mean he has to. And if you look at the video of that particular play, Kadarius Toney breaks the huddle. He looks over at the official and he gave a wave and he looked back. He didn't ask him anything. He didn't get confirmation. He didn't give a chance to have any sort of warning. And again, there's no obligation to have any sort of warning. It's just basically, as the game goes, sometimes you will get officials that say, "Hey, you know what? You're a little, over the line. You might want to move back." Just like sometimes throughout the game, you might get an official go up to a left tackle and go, "Hey, you're really close to holding there. I'm going to have to call that if you got to let go of that jersey a little bit sooner." This is how it works throughout the game in every situation. But guess what? It doesn't mean they're not going to call holding the next time on the guy if it happens, just like it doesn't mean they're not going to call offsides. It was offsides. What disappoints me is that Andy Reid, one of the greatest head coaches in our game, class act, model, coach for many, and he's been around a long time. And for him to be the guy to kind of lead this charge along with Patrick Mahomes is disappointing because they know it's a penalty. They're not even disputing it's a penalty. That's the thing. They're not saying it's not a penalty. They're saying it's a penalty, but you shouldn't call it in that situation, which I think is a little ridiculous.
Exactly, I agree with that point. And Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's some interesting information because I mean, I've been watching football 45 years here, and I was never aware that, that they check in with the referees like that. I mean, I know there's situations where, again, the referee will give warnings and certain things with holding and things like that, but that's a very interesting point. In all the years I've been watching football, though, I can't remember an offensive offsides this obvious. So, I mean, I thought, we were talking about this backstage. I actually thought they were arguing about something else. I was like, did we miss some kind of pass interference, or is that what they're upset about? I couldn't even tell what they were so upset about, not knowing, until later that it was the offsides, and even not so much even from a Bills perspective, but just from watching the game, it just looked very, very obvious, and I don't think they have an argument with that, but. Very interesting again that I've never heard of the warnings like that either.
Yeah, I think the word warning is a little bit too. I think people are being really too liberal with that. To be honest with you, ever since the game, it's really just a discussion. Like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
trying to, I'm trying. Here's where I'm supposed to be. Okay, I got you. And you might tell them to move up or back. And a lot of times, actually, what the receiver's actually checking in on is to let the official know that they're on the line and not in the backfield. Because
Mhm.
if they're in the backfield, that's too many men in the backfield, not enough men on the line of
Right.
scrimmage, actually. So what's really they're doing is the opposite. When they're checking in and say, hey, I'm on the line, am I good? They might tell them to move up a little bit because they want to make sure that you're not in an illegal formation. Because again, you're also trying to help a receiver who's 20 yards away from the ball. Doesn't actually. People could say it's easy to know where the line of scrimmage is. Yes, it is. But when you're standing there and you're down the line, it's not as easy as you think it is sometimes.
Right.
So really, there's a working relationship there. But when it's that egregious, as you said, Joe, you have to call it. It's been called 12 times this year. It was called in the game that night against the
Mhm.
Philadelphia Eagles, by the way. It was called. So, I mean,
Right.
it's a little bit more of a point of emphasis this year, especially with the RPO game coming in and wanting to make sure that, we give enough advantages to offenses these days. So I think it's, a little bit more of a point of emphasis this year, even to make sure that the defense understands who's eligible and who's not and where they're lined up.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think it makes sense too. Now, the NFL's competition committee is evaluating the Philadelphia Eagles tush push play. And what's to evaluate? Has anyone ever heard of the quarterback sneak? How can you think about even removing it from the game? It's not like every team isn't allowed to perform the play. How would you even determine to penalize a team for performing it if it did become illegal? So, Sal, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it should be illegal. I guess it's not a regular quarterback sneak to me. To me, it falls under the heading of aiding the runner, and you're not allowed to be in front of the runner and pull him. That is a penalty. In fact, if you watch the Bills game against the Kansas City Chiefs, Josh Allen, he got pushed by his players into the end zone. If you see Spencer Brown in that play, he's kind of Josh is coming at him. He's like near the goal line, and he went to grab him. And he went like this because he didn't want a penalty. If you grab
Mhm.
and you pull forward, that is called aiding the runner. To me, the tush push is another form of aiding the runner. I don't like it. I think it should be banned. However, it's not, and everybody should use it to their advantage until it is. If it's not a
Mhm.
penalty and it is a legal play, then use it. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles have a quarterback that squats 600 pounds. He should use it. I mean, he's a guy. He's just too tough for him to bring down. I think the Buffalo Bills should use it. But I think the committee should review it. I said this last year. To me, it is no different than the aiding the runner penalty. That is what it is on the other side when you pull them, and I think that they should look at making this and falling under that heading.
Okay, Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on it actually. It's like I hate to see a play removed just because it's working for somebody, and obviously the Eagles have it mastered pretty much. The brotherly shove there, but there are rules in place, and these there's some gray areas here with this as far as, like you said, aiding the runner. That I think they need to check in to the legality of it. So again, I hate to see something that's working for somebody all of a sudden now come under scrutiny, but is it going against the rules? And I think the committee has to definitely take a close look at that.
Right, and I think they should look at the punting and kick returns too as well to bring those back a little bit too. Um, Now, moving on to the possibility of the NFL being played in Brazil. The Miami Dolphins could have the opportunity to start in Sao Paulo, Brazil next year. They have already played in Frankfurt, Germany this year with a 21-14 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. While the NFL has never played a game in South America, do you think it is a good idea for the NFL to expand its overseas coverage? Sal, what do you think about the possible coverage in Brazil next year?
Is it the talk? I haven't seen that the Dolphins are the team that's being talked about here. I just know that the NFL is talking about playing in Brazil, so I haven't seen them specifically.
Yeah, the Dolphins are talking
Yeah.
about it according
Well,
to NFL
yeah,
articles,
and well, that's
NFL news
interesting.
articles.
Yeah, no problem. And I think anytime the NFL can expand its footprint somewhere, it's good for the league. It's going to be more money, but I think we all see too, though, that it also hurts the fan base at that home place. Like in Buffalo this year, they had a home game in London, right? It hurts the home fans having a home game. It really wasn't a home game. The Bills have to go to London, play Jacksonville, where they were already waiting there after playing a game. And I think the only reason they'd be considering Brazil would be because the Mexico City game isn't going to be played because of the World Cup next year. It's going to be there. So normally you'd play in Mexico City for a game, but because the World Cup's going to be there, they're going to find an alternate place somewhere. And I guess that's going to be Brazil. Look, they're going to be playing everywhere. This is inevitable. This train, the tube is out of the toothpaste. They're not slowing it down. The train is on the tracks. We're going to be playing in all different countries around the world. There's 17 games now. Every year, one conference has an extra home game. They're going to be figuring that out. So, sure. I mean, as a guy who travels with teams, I loved going to London this year. And my wife's from Germany. We were hoping the Bills would get Germany this year and go to Frankfurt. That didn't happen. Maybe that'll be next year. I'd love to go to Brazil. I just think it stinks for the fans who have a chance to see in their home, their home stadium and get robbed of a home game. But I'm fine with the league overall, going to other countries. I mean, I love football, and I think it's a great sport for the world to see.
Okay, so now this weekend we have several teams that are tied at 7-6 with the Bills. So let's take a look at them. The first matchup this Saturday will be the 7-6 Pittsburgh Steelers minus Kenny Pickett and starting Mitch Trubisky, will heading on the road to Lucas Oil Stadium to take on the 7-6 Indianapolis Colts led by Gardner Minshew. And then the second one we have 7-6 Denver Broncos, who have been hot as of recently after starting out the season 0-3. They will be heading to Ford Field to take on the 9-4 Detroit Lions in the Motor City. The 7-6 Minnesota Vikings, now led by Nick Mullins, will be on the road in the jungle to face the 7-6 Cincinnati Bengals, led by the feel-good story of the year and backup quarterback Jake Browning, followed by the 7-6 Houston Texans, traveling on the road to the 5-8 Tennessee Titans, who just got a big win over Miami on Monday Night Football. Congratulations to Will Levis on his biggest win so far in his rookie year. And then lastly, we have the 10-3 Cowboys traveling to Orchard Park to take on the Josh Allen-led 7-6 Buffalo Bills. What game do you think will impact the Bills the most? Sal, do you want to go?
Yeah, it's their own game. I'm just kidding. Of course it is, right? I mean, but that'll impact the most. But outside of their own game, I think all of those games with 7-6 teams. Let's take a look at the schedule. You have two 7-6 teams playing each other, Pittsburgh and Indy. So what do you do there? You say, which one? Well, one of them's got to get a win, which stinks, but one of them's got to get a loss, right? So as long as the Bills take care of business, they're going to jump one of those teams, no doubt about it. But they're probably going to be behind one of those teams because of their conference record in this situation. And then, look, I mean, because the Broncos have already beaten the Bills and because the Cincinnati Bengals have already beaten the Bills and they're both playing NFC teams, those are monstrous games for the Bills. You need the NFC team. It would be Minnesota in the Bengals case. It would be Detroit in the Broncos case. You need those teams to win because there's nothing wrong with them winning. It's not going to impact the Bills, the NFC team, but you could give those teams losses. And right now, you need to outright beat those teams. You can't be tied with them because of the tiebreaker situation between the Bills and those teams.
Right.
Exactly. Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's the kind of the lesser of the evils here, right? Because the two teams that I fear the least as far as getting in the Bills' way and the teams that I'm most confident will fade out of the playoff picture are the Steelers and the Colts. So one of those teams is going to win. So they're still going to be in the way here. And of course, as was just said, a lot depends on the Bills taking care of business here, because if they don't, then it's a moot point as far as, the Bills playoff picture here. But, I think Denver's in a tough spot because they're going against the ticked off Lions team that's trying to get back on the right track, that just lost a couple of divisional games, the games at Detroit, like you said. So I think the Lions are going to be hungry, right? And as well as the Broncos have been playing, I think they're just going to run into a buzzsaw, and that's going to be a tough one. So, the Bengals are going to hang in there. The Texans are going to hang in there. So, again, it's kind of a double-edged sword to me, because the two teams that I think are least likely to fade out, one of those teams is definitely going to win, as far as the Steelers or the Colts. So we'll have to see what happens.
I think
going
that the
forward
Colts
with that.
have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way comparably. So if you're looking at it from that standpoint, I think you'd want the Steelers to win, because the Steelers have a tougher schedule, and you think that they can. But either way, right? It's 6 of one, half a dozen another, like you say. But if you look at the schedule down the stretch, I think the Colts look like the team that might have a better chance to win a little bit more. So maybe give them a loss here, because I think the Steelers have more of a chance to lose, in those last few games as we go on.
Going forward, yeah.
Okay, so unfortunately, it's now time to say goodbye to Sal, as he has to leave us now to go do his own podcast. So, Sal, thank you very much for coming on our show tonight, and you are welcome to come back on anytime. You were great.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate you. Keep up the great work. Nice meeting both of you, and catch up down the road and hit me up again in the off season when things slow down a little bit more, and we'll talk about the off season in 2024.
Likewise, we very much appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Jamie.
Sure, no problem. Okay, but now Joe and I will continue with our question of the week segment. It is now that time for our question of the week segment, Joe. Are you ready to give this a try?
I don't know why I always get so stressed during this part of the show. It's like all of a sudden I could feel my blood pressure going up, but I am ready. And I think I aced the question last week, so I'm going to go for 2 in a row here.
All right, well, let's see. Here's your question, Joe. Can you guess who this NFL player was? He played on 2 different teams. He was a one-time MVP, won 1 Super Bowl trophy. Is it Drew Brees, Sean Alexander, Kurt Warner, or Marshall Falk?
Oh, my goodness. So you said played on 2 teams, MVP, Super Bowl champ? All those are true. Because I have a guess. You said 2 teams, a Super Bowl, and an MVP.
Yes, I did.
I am going to go with Marshall Falk.
You got it. That's the correct answer. As Marshall Falk was originally drafted by the Colts with the number 5 overall pick in the 1994 NFL draft. Had a really good season there, but then was traded to the Rams, where he won a Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf, and the rest is history. And he was also on the cover of Madden 2003 when that came out. So,
Right.
So now, are we ready to talk about Thursday night's game where the New England Patriots upset the Pittsburgh Steelers with a 21-18 win? So, Joe, did you see that coming?
Not really. I kind of diss the Steelers every time I come on this show, but I still expected them to win that game. And, somehow, we've said it all year. They find ways to win, winning games that they shouldn't win. And this is a loss that I think shouldn't have happened here, give credit to Zappy and the Patriots, who kind of rejuvenated them, but I still didn't think it would be enough to beat a team like the Steelers, who are in a playoff hunt. But good for them, and the Patriots are going to show that they're not going to go away. I mean, they're out of the playoff picture here, and it's not the season they envisioned, and there's a lot of questions in New England there. But one thing that's not being questioned is that if you're going to play the Patriots the rest of the way, in the remaining games, that they're not going to make it easy for you.
And we play them too on New Year's Eve, so we
Yes.
got to remember that. And I think Bailey Zappi can end up being their guy next year. Maybe they don't have to get a quarterback or tank for one. We'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Now moving on to the 1 o'clock Jacksonville Jaguars at Cleveland Browns game. The Browns squeaked out the win, 31-27, with Joe Flacco in for Deshaun Watson, and even Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in on a fourth down play where he quarterback sneaked his way for the first down. So, Joe, what did you think about Cleveland winning that game?
Yeah, that was an excellent game. I was able to watch the second half, and the game was on locally here, and I just kind of stuck with that game. A lot of Sundays I watch NFL Red Zone to get a taste of each of the games, but I was out. I had gotten back, mid-afternoon, and so I had that game on, and it was a fun game to watch. I wasn't sure Trevor Lawrence was going to play the game. There was questions leading up to the game, and I thought the Browns would have an easier time. But with Lawrence in there, he played well. The team played well. But, the Browns showed that they're for real. And, with an 8-5 record now, they're not going away. Joe Flacco played like he was 10 years younger. And I give credit to the Browns. I mean, that was a game that they had to win, and they did against a very good team. So, maybe not good for Bills fans, but good for Browns fans and for the Browns. It was a good quality game by both teams, and the Browns won it.
And their defense still showed why they're among the top in the league. So
that's right.
Now we're moving on to, let's turn our attention to the main event, the 4:20 game, the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. With playoff implications on the line, Ed Oliver was a key factor in helping the Bills to pull off the win 20-17. So, Joe, were you biting your nails while you were watching this game? Because I certainly was.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking during the game, we've seen this movie before. And I thought a lot of the way through it that we were going to have the same ending that we usually see with the Bills teams in this situation, especially in Kansas City, right? I honestly thought the Bills would fall short, but this actually had a different ending. And several things encouraged me. I mean, the fact that Josh Allen statistically maybe didn't have his best game, but mentally and as a leader, I thought he did. His quarterback rating was only about a 69, which isn't that impressive. I mean, his stats weren't horrible, but not something that stands out. But again, he showed that winning games is what's most important, and he led this team to victory. Now, it wasn't all Josh Allen. There were a lot of people involved on the defense. Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau played big parts. Taron Johnson played an excellent game. I believe he was 9 or 10 tackles, and he seemed like he was all over the field. So defensively, they came up big when they had to. And offensively, I mean, again, you look at the stats, that ball is being spread around. Kind of interesting that the leading receiver was James Cook, 85 yards receiving, and that was double what the next guy was. So, or more than double, I think. So I like the fact that they're throwing the ball to James Cook. One of the reasons they drafted him was his ability to catch the ball and to make things happen on pass plays. And that certainly, came to play here. But again, I love the way they spread the ball around, and how Stephon Diggs is going to feel about that. I guess we'll see down the road. Again, only 4 catches, 24 yards or so. So, I don't know how that's going to go, but I like the fact that the ball was spread. The offense was balanced. They ran the ball again over 100 yards. They've only lost once when that's happened. So, again, James Cook, catching passes here. So I like the way they called plays, and I like the balance on the offense, and I think that was a big part of the victory too. I liked how guys stepped up on defense. That was a big part of the victory too. Josh Allen's leadership. Sean McDermott was on a mission, it seemed like, for this game. He really wanted this one after the week that he had. They were playing, their tails off for him. So just a lot of things, worked out here. Again, the only thing is we were tricked with the ending. For once, there was controversy on calls with the other team, not the Bills. Even though I think those calls were correct, I didn't see anything wrong with them. And again, the Bills actually came out ahead this time, which is something that hasn't been happening in recent close games. So, a lot of things went well, and it's always good to get the victory. And I'm curious to see what stands out with you. I said a lot here, but like I said, very curious to see what your thoughts are and what stands out most to you as far as this game's concerned.
I think it's awesome. We finally closed the game. I was impressed with the way the defense just locked down the whole way. I like how they're getting the ball to James Cook in the passing game, and they're pounding the rock with him to start out the game for clock management. Keeping Mahomes off the field was great. Just the game plan, again, was excellent. It's just this time we came out on top with a close win, and unlike the game 2 weeks ago against Philly where we had a great game plan, but it still ended up in a loss.
Right. I totally agree with all that.
So, well, guys, just to let you know that I will be going to the Bills-Cowboys game this Sunday. So let's give our predictions to see who will win this one. Joe, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. A little jealous, but I'm very happy for you that you get to go to the game, and I hope you enjoy it there. This is a game in the beginning of the season. I had the Bills winning, and I'm still gonna call it that way. Dallas is a totally different team away from home. Not that they're horrible on the road. I mean, they're 3-3 on the road. They're unbeatable and ungodly at home. I mean, I looked at the stats. I said this last week, and they're outscoring opponents at home 40-15 on the average. So if this game was in Dallas, I'd say I wouldn't give the Bills much of a chance. Again, Dallas, I think they're outscoring teams on the road, but it's like 24-21, not 40-15. We all know the Bills play excellent ball at home. And I think, again, one of the factors that I think the Bills are going to win this game is the desperation factor. Dallas is basically in the playoffs. I know they could still win the division, and they're going to be gearing to do that. But if Dallas loses this game at Buffalo, it's not the end of the world for them. The Bills can't lose any more games. And so I think they're going to play like that, especially a home game like this when they still have to, play a couple of road games here down the stretch. So I think the desperation factor is going to favor the Bills here too, because again, they can't lose this game. So after saying that, though, I'm going to tell you it's going to be very close. My final score prediction is Bills 27, Cowboys 24.
Okay, well, here's what I think. The Bills' defense is great. However, Kansas City's receiving core has shown that they've not been good ever since they've gotten rid of Tyreek Hill, and all they got is Travis Kelce. But Dallas is loaded with a lot of great receivers, and I think it could be an offensive shootout. I got it a little bit higher. I got Bills 34, Dallas 31.
Excellent. Okay.
So now taking a look at that Cowboys Sunday night game with the Eagles taking on the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium, the Cowboys have now won 15 straight home games, beating the Eagles 33-13. Well, kicker Brandon Aubrey of the USFL, by the way, you know how much I love my USFL guys. He had 2 of his 4 field goals from 59 yards or further, with both teams now 10-3. Joe, do you still think Dallas has a chance to win the division?
Yeah, I think Dallas has a chance to win that division. I think they were saying that the Eagles have the tiebreakers. The Eagles have the easier schedule, so it still favors Philadelphia to win that division. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas does. I think I picked them in the beginning of the season to do that. I kind of expected the Eagles to pull this off because, as I said, I was talking about how amazing the Cowboys are at home. Before this game, they were outscoring opponents again like 41-14. And just as we say stuff like that and we say how great they are at home, the Eagles this was a perfect setup, I thought, for the Eagles to pull an upset here. And even if the Cowboys won, I thought it would be very close. I did not expect another blowout in Dallas by the Cowboys. And again, we've got what we've seen, for all season long. And like you said, 15 straight games in that place without a loss. I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, they only have one regular season game left there, but I could see them running the table at home and again win that division. That's going to be huge because if the Cowboys do win that division, guess where these games are going to be played? Because if they win that division, there's also a chance they're the number one seed in the NFC. And if the playoffs go through Dallas that way, then that could be a big problem for those NFC teams. So it'll be very interesting to see. Again, Dallas still has to come here. I believe they play Miami, and I think that game is in Miami. So I don't know who their other two games are against, but they have a tougher schedule. So we shall see.
Detroit's another one.
Who is it?
Detroit. And,
Okay.
Let's take a look over here. Let's see. We have Washington Commanders.
Okay. And I don't know which one of those games is in Dallas, but whichever one it is, good luck. But Dallas has a tougher schedule than the Eagles do. I looked at it and I'm blanking as far as who they have left. But it's going to be very.
Home.
Who is it?
Detroit's at home.
Okay, so that Detroit game in Dallas, which Detroit has the capability to pull an upset there, but it's going to be difficult. And with that, I can't remember seeing that kind of point differential at home. I mean, Miami was playing extremely well at home too until the other night, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I cannot remember seeing this kind of home dominance in a very long time.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And as of right now, they were wrong about the tiebreakers. Dallas actually has the tiebreaker right now over Philly because they got.
Oh, really? Cowboys. Okay.
They got the Cowboys ranked second and the Eagles ranked fifth as of right now.
I was not aware of that. I thought I had heard somewhere that it was reversed or that it was the opposite. But that can make a difference going forward, then.
It's because Dallas has won more divisional games than Philly has.
Gotcha.
So anyway, now let's take a look at our last matchup, the Monday Night Football game. In a stunning event, the Tennessee Titans beat the Miami Dolphins 28-27 in a game that we all thought the Dolphins would win. Joe, did you see that coming, and could you see that feeling coming in the air tonight?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, the Dolphins were like 2 touchdown favorites in that game. And I had them in a pool with the points. So I
took
had the
Tennessee in the ESPN spread.
You did? Yeah, see, I didn't see that coming. I had the Dolphins winning this game. And again, the Dolphins are a very dominating home team as well. Tennessee plays decent at home, but they're horrible on the road. So that's I based on that matchup alone, I said, I could see the Dolphins winning this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns instead of the 2 that they were favored. Now, I didn't get to see any of this game, so I don't know how it happened here. I don't know if the Dolphins made mistakes. I don't know if Tennessee played just like, amazing out of their heads football. If Derrick Henry resurrected, I don't know. I didn't get even to look at the stats for that one.
Go ahead.
He was.
Derrick Henry was resurrected, and Tyreek Hill actually got hurt, and now they think he might be out for the rest of the year. We'll see. Yeah,
that would be a sin. I would hate to see that because he was an MVP candidate, and I would definitely hate to see that for the Dolphins, So I heard he got hurt because a friend of mine lost a parlay bet because of it. But that would be horrible if he was out for the season. Still, I wouldn't have seen the Dolphins losing this game in any way. That's a shock to me.
And speaking of the Dolphins, Joe, when Sal was on, we had a comment from our good friends at the Back It Up Binge podcast, which is the Miami podcast here. And at 8:22, they commented, "You guys are right back in the hunt with your V and Fins L in the final game of the season." Yeah,
and that's true. Thank you for the comment, first of all. We always appreciate that. And, again, I hope Tyreek Hill can come back. But yeah, you're right. Game on, especially with that showdown at the end of the season. So, we'll definitely see. And I took a peek at the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a pretty tough schedule, I think we said before. So, we'll see. I mean, the Bills have a tough schedule too. I mean, you might. I think New England is a win, but that game I almost said San Diego. That game in Los Angeles against the Chargers is no guarantee.
But
You know,
Justin
and
Herbert's out for the year now, and Easton Stick starting.
and okay. So, I mean, it's a game the Bills should win, and if they want to make the playoffs, they have to win. But they just have to make sure that they're not looking ahead to that Miami game, while they're in Los Angeles. So, that's going to be interesting to
Well,
see.
they got to play New England at home first in their home finale before Miami.
Okay, that's right. I had it reversed. I had New England after this game and then that one. But you're right, it's the opposite. So, but even any of those games, they can't take them for granted.
Right, especially because we lost to the Patriots in Foxborough on a game-winning touchdown from Mac Jones to Mike Gesicki in a game we should have never lost anyway.
Right. And those are the games that, unfortunately, if the Bills don't make the playoffs, are the ones we're going to circle and say that's where it happened. That game and the Denver game is the biggest reason they're not there if that happens.
Mm-hmm. But let's say positive, because I think they got a really good shot at either making it as a wild card or the division.
Well, right now,
they're there.
they definitely have that momentum going. So it definitely looks a lot more possible or even probable than it did a couple of weeks ago.
Exactly, and we can agree on that.
Definitely.
So let's get back to these Saturday games and make our prediction on who will win each game. So, Joe, who do you think will win the 7-6 Pittsburgh at 7-6 Indy matchup?
Oh, man, it's a tough game because I'm not sold on either of these teams. And, I mean, Gardner Minshew has been playing solid football. I mean, I think he's an underrated quarterback. I mean, he's not, he's never going to be an amazing elite quarterback. But even when he was with Jacksonville, he won them some games. He kept them competitive. And he's done a great job keeping the Colts competitive and keeping them in the playoff picture here this year. So I think, the Colts have an advantage quarterback because Mitchell Trubisky, as much as us Bills fans would love to see him succeed, he hasn't looked good. And I don't as far as quarterback is concerned, it's advantage Colts. But as far as overall and as far as defense, as far as intangibles, I see the Steelers winning this game.
What final score? What do you think?
20-13.
Okay. I agree with that. Indy definitely has the quarterback advantage with Minshew, and he also has the advantage with his mustache, by the way, which was a phenomenon in 2019. People were dressing up as him for Halloween with the mustache there. And but anyway, I still like Mr. Trubisky as a former Bills fan. I still think he's a capable quarterback who hasn't looked good, but I think he gets his revenge over Minshew here, and I do think the Steelers will win. I got Steelers 23, Colts 16.
Okay. So a little more higher scoring. Now, you're big on Chris Berman here, right? If you've ever watched NFL Primetime, one of my favorite Chris Berman bits, every time Minshew has the ball, you ever see? Meh, Minshew! And,
instead of like, chew, sneezing. Yeah,
right.
I've heard of that.
I laugh every time.
See, I used to watch NFL Primetime back in the day when it was on regular ESPN, but I don't watch NFL Primetime now because it's on ESPN Plus. But one thing's for sure, even with the media format, Chris Berman's still Chris Berman. He will never change, which is great.
Yes, it's amazing.
So anyway, our second matchup, we have the 7-6 Denver Broncos at the 9-4 Detroit Lions, and I think you already said Detroit will probably win this game, and play with a vengeance here. But what do you think the score will be since you think Detroit will win it?
All right. I say Lions 30, Broncos 14.
Yeah, I think the Denver has been playing well, but I think they just run into a team that they're just totally outmatched and nothing goes right, and or they just beat themselves. And the Goff and the Lions offense, Sam Laporte, I think, goes off in this game with
Right.
100 yards as a tight end. And Denver's offense is going to be too much for their defense. So I have the Lions 35, the Broncos 10.
Okay.
Now, what about another battle of the 7-6 teams? We have the 7-6 Minnesota Vikings, led by now Nick Mullins, aka Jimmy Garoppolo's backup in San Francisco, and the 7-6 Cincinnati Bengals, led by this year's Wonder Boy Jake Browning as the backup quarterback to Joe Burrow. Who do you got winning this game, and what do you think the final score is?
It's a tough game. I mean, now this game's in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this and usually I run like simulations on these games and stuff too. I didn't get a chance to do that, but this is going to be a tough one. I think, let's see. I'm going to say Bengals 24, Vikings 23.
That's kind of that's good for the Bengals, but that's bad for the Bills fans.
Yeah.
I think this will be a close game because it's a battle of backup quarterbacks. However, though, I think Minnesota has shown that whoever they've had, that they can get on a hot streak. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say Minnesota Vikings 24, Cincinnati Bengals 23.
Okay. Now I do have the Bengals. I was looking at their schedule, and I have the Bengals going 9-8 by the end of the season. So I still think the Bills will finish ahead of them. This is one of those games the Bengals win, I think, but it could go either way, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings do win this, as well. But I honestly think the Bengals win this, but they still end up only going 9-8.
And as we talked about with Jake Browning, that wouldn't be bad, but it would be bad because they would miss the playoffs after knocking us out last year in the divisional round.
Exactly.
And moving on, we have the last 7-6 team, the Houston Texans, on the road at the 5-8 Tennessee Titans. Now, we already talked about how Tennessee pulled off a huge road win against Miami with Will Levis and the resurrection of King Henry. Joe, what do you think of this game being at home? It's a divisional game, and Will Levis is still trying to look for wins as Tennessee continues to develop them. So who do you think wins this game and final score?
Okay. This is a tough one because Tennessee, again, is usually a different team at home. Houston, believe it or not, I would have never said this in the beginning of the season, but of the 7-6 teams, this one scares me the most because they just won't go away. I think this is going to be a very close game. I could see, I'm going to say Houston 24, Tennessee 20.
You know what? I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think it's going to be a game where it is 24-20, but I think Will Levis pulls off one of his first ever game-winning drives as a rookie. So I'm going to say Tennessee Titans 27, Houston Texans 24, and a second consecutive upset for the Titans.
I would love to see it. And again, with Vrabel as the coach, that's another team that if I'm fighting for a playoff spot, I don't want to play. They're going to make it difficult. And even though, again, I said the Texans are going to win this game, I would not be surprised at all if Tennessee just, pulls another upset here. But I think it's gonna be close. I think Houston pulls out a close one, but again, that's not going to be a fun team to play against the Tennessee Titans for the rest of the year, especially in Nashville.
Or heading into next year if they start out with Will Levis at quarterback too.
That's right.
Well, folks, it looks like we are coming to the end of our show. So, Joe, where can we find you in this social media world on December the 12th, 2023?
All right, on December the 12th, 2023, and as we head into 2024, Joe Dal Sports on X Twitter. I like to throw different, not only stuff on the Bills, but different sports as well, and you can find me there.
Okay, and then you can always find me, yours truly, on Bill's Mafia Chat, or Bill's Chat 1, excuse me, at Bill's Mafia Chat, and at Jamie Malloy, the unbiased journalist, at DJ Dog Tags on Twitter X, whatever you want to call it these days, and also on DefiantTakesFootball.com, where I write stories about the Bills, Syracuse football, and spring football. And you may want to check out some of my recent Syracuse football articles about the new coach and his recruiting momentum, that he's already off to a hot start with Syracuse. So look for more articles on that and Bills articles as well. And thank you very much for listening. And remember, folks, the officials don't have to give a warning to Andy Reid. Patrick Mahomes did apologize to the nation. The Titans beating Miami helps the Bills. And to quote our friend Chris Berman, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. We'll see you next time, folks.
All right, thanks for watching. Good night.
Night.
To rock this place. Hey! Hey!